You're listening to the House of Cards on the Big Patriot Radio Network.
Introducing to you.
You're on House of Cards. Live on Facebook and YouTube.
It's going down now.
Locked and loaded with the truth.
Tonight's show is brought to you by the folks at WeThePatriotShop.com/big. Contact them at 518-538-2877 if you're looking for hormone-free, grass-fed, Black Angus, American-grown beef. For your next cookout, you're going to want to visit the folks at WeThePatriotShop.com/big. Your cookout and barbecue will be the hit of the summer. Check them out again at WeThePatriotShop.com/big and tell them you heard about them on Big Patriot Radio.
Locked and loaded.
Let's go.
Big Patriot Radio. Blues, news, country pop, and classic rock.
Hey, and welcome everybody. It's another Thursday night, and this is Beaufort County's House of Cards. Thank you to everybody who is joining in with us tonight. Don't forget, we are broadcasting every Thursday night on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter. Also simulcasting live on BigPatriotRadio.com. And you can go back and look at old podcasts. If you go to YouTube, that's probably the best place. You can go back and look under the live feed on YouTube and check out all of them. You can also go to Facebook if you want to sort through those. And maybe sometime in the future, we'll have like an onboard library. But the number one song this past week on Big Patriot Radio was none other than The Jack from AC/DC. And the number one listening town last week, Ridgeland, South Carolina. No surprise, probably due to our guest that we had last week, which was former sheriff and current sheriff candidate in Jasper County, Chris Malfris. So congratulations, Ridgeland. I think that's your first time being number one.
Your rock authority. Big Patriot Radio.
I wouldn't tell anybody about this.
Well, again, thanks a lot for tuning in, folks. We want to hear from you. Just get in your chat bar of whatever platform you're on and send a message, a statement, comment, question, whatever. It should get over here to us, and we'll put it on the screen if we need to, or answer it, or whatever. Tonight's show, going to do something a little different. Tonight's show is it's being dedicated to a handful of fellows. I want to tell you about this story I met the other day, and I want to set the scene for you. I was traveling back to the Low Country from northern Georgia, up in the Lake Hartwell area. I just got off I-20 and was in the Beach Island area there, like south of Augusta and south of Aiken. I needed to stop for some fuel. Needed something to drink, and I was going to be going through what I refer to, and many locals refer to, as the Savannah Bomb Plant, aka the Savannah River Site, and then into Allendale and Estill and so forth. And there's not any gas stations for miles and miles. So got gas, went inside the convenience store for a couple of drinks, and was in line paying. And this group of guys had come in, and I noticed one or two. They were saying something, and they looked at me and whatever. And one of them said out loud, said, "Hey, aren't you the Big Patriot Radio guy?" They laughed. I laughed and was like, "Yeah, I am." Matter of fact, we shook hands and exchanged pleasantries. These guys were on their lunch hour from the bomb plant, as I call it. And again, they were coming there for drinks or whatever they had. I don't know. They came to this convenience store to grab some stuff during their lunch hour. We talked for just a bit, and they told me one of them lives in Jasper County, I believe it was. The one that lives in Jasper County had watched the show online, but all of them within the past few months or whatever, doing shift work, had gone to second shift. So they couldn't watch the show any longer while they're on second shift, but they had to listen to it. So I had noticed, and it came up as Barnwell. I didn't know it was the bomb plant, but we've got some listeners there in the bomb plant. So cheers to all of the men and women working at the Savannah River site. The second shift, tonight's show is dedicated to you all.
Everything that rocks is right here. Right here.
Let's rock.
With Big Patriot Radio.
That's what I'm talking about.
So on the drive home through the Savannah River site, and for some reason, the mystique and all that, I got to thinking about the place. Those guys that I just talked to, real nice guys, and I hope you guys are doing a good evening this evening. And sort of thinking about what's going on there. You can't help but think because of the signs that says, do not get out of your vehicle, do not come here, do not go there, gates and all that kind of stuff. I was wondering, what really goes on there? Do people even think about that? I wonder how many people move here and don't even know about it. You see, the Savannah River site, back before the Cold War, it really was a bomb plant. With the end of the Cold War, they stopped making bombs there, supposedly. It is still to this day very, very secure. I mean, it's extremely secure and quite mysterious, actually. So I thought about, let's talk about that a little bit, kind of move off of what we normally do. And talk about, what is Savannah River site? So if you've never been there, it's a great day trip. It's an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours north and west of the Low Country here in South Carolina. You can head up Route 125 once you get over there into Allendale. You're going to go into Barnwell and Aiken counties. And through that trek, you will be driving in and along the border of, or the edge of, rather, not the border, you'll be in it, the Savannah River site. So the Savannah River site opened in 1951. It's 310 square miles property. It's owned by the United States Department of Energy. This facility spans 3 counties and over 198,000 acres. There's approximately 13,000 employees there, and they have an annual budget somewhere of north of $3.8 billion with a B dollars. President Truman back in 1950 gave the order to build such a facility, and that began in 1951. And over the course of history, building, rebuilding, etc., has been in operation ever since. The Savannah River site currently is an industrial complex responsible for national security and non-proliferation missions, disposition of nuclear materials, waste management, and not waste management of trash, waste management of nuclear waste, and environmental cleanup and stewardship. Now, all of this information I got from the Department of Energy and the Savannah River site and its outward reach programs. The Savannah River site, the bomb plant, safely produces, secures, stores, and processes nuclear materials in support of national defense and U.S. nuclear proliferation efforts. This site also develops and deploys technologies to protect the environment, including the treatment of solid and liquid nuclear and hazardous waste left still from the Cold War, rather. Now, there is a lot to unpack from those last two statements, and they came directly from the Department of Energy. But in a nutshell, they have plutonium and tritium, and there's another one, uranium, on site. They create methods and practices, rather, to store it safely. Plutonium, tritium, and uranium. The cocktail for nuclear weapons. My concern with that is that I hope we are receiving, I hope we're not, let me put it that way. I hope we're not receiving plutonium and tritium from other states to store their waste as well. However, I'm not going to hold my breath because I have a pretty good inkling that we do receive it from other states. But I haven't talked to them. I don't know if they are or not. By the way, we do have a guest coming on tonight in the 8 o'clock hour, so stay tuned for that. But what did Savannah River site used to do? Well, in the 1950s, they produced materials used in nuclear weapons, primarily that tritium and plutonium-239 for all of you science geeks out there. 5 reactors were out there, support facilities, just unbelievably number of these support facilities. They would get built, they'd get demolished, and built again, and again, and again, and again, and again. Irradiated materials were moved from the reactors to one of the 2 chemical separations plants. These are huge, where they actually separate chemicals from a compound into individual chemicals. I don't know how all that works, but I get the gist. In these facilities known as canyons, the irradiated fuel and target assemblies were chemically processed to separate useful products from waste. What does that mean? Well, like if you took this is probably not the best analogy, but if you took a computer board and you started pulling all the little things off of the back of it, they have little legs, there's gold in those. But to get that gold out, you've got to put it in a mixture of like sulfuric acid, then you rinse it, and then this, and then this, and then this, and eventually you end up with gold. That's somewhat, I guess, similar what I'm trying to wrap my little brain around. In these canyons, how they separate these chemicals and you get the useful products away from the waste. So after refinement, the nuclear materials were shipped to other DOE sites for final application. The Savannah River site produced about 36 metric tons of plutonium from 1953 to 1988. Obviously, that's when they stopped. That's when the Cold War ended. 36 metric tons of plutonium. Well, what else did they do? Well, the Savannah River Tritium Enterprise, called the SRTE, that is the nation's only resource for managing our country's tritium stockpile. Didn't know that. Is the collective term for the facilities, people, expertise, and activities currently, right now, at the Savannah River site related to tritium. Tritium is an isotope of hydrogen and a key element of nuclear weapons. SRTE prepares the tritium supply for our national defense and transports, now this is concerning, transports loaded containers called reservoirs to the Department of Defense, where they're installed in nuclear weapons in support of the nuclear deterrent. I wouldn't be too far-fetched to say in this day and age, I bet Savannah River site is pretty damn important, trying to reload or add to, I guess is a better word, of our nuclear arsenal. Tritium decays radioactively at the rate of 5.5% each year and must be replenished periodically. Now, I don't know where does it go when it decays. That kind of concerns me a little bit. SRTE accomplishes this by 2 methods, they tell me. One, they recycle tritium from the reservoirs of existing warheads. So we have warheads there that they leak out, or decay rather, at 5.5% each year. They recycle that tritium that leaks out, extracts new tritium from fuel rods that had been irradiated in a Tennessee Valley Authority commercial light water reactor. Interesting. In the absence of nuclear weapons testing, designers must rely on surveillance data to certify the reliability of U.S. nuclear weapons. Again, I have a feeling that they're pretty busy right about now. To support this certification, a number of reservoirs are removed from weapons in the nuclear stockpile, and that would be throughout the country, and sent to the Savannah River site for testing. So we're receiving, I guess it would be nuclear waste from other states, either by train or truck. I don't know. From other places, and we're getting warheads in from other places, and we're doing all this testing. The NNSA, which is like the National Nuclear Service Authority, I think it is, has undertaken the modernization of the Savannah River site, and they maintain the ability to continue fulfilling the important mission for the future. This includes a new process facility out there called the TFF, or the Tritium Finishing Facility, which they're, like I said, it's in the process. They say it'll be completed in 2035. It is being built by government contract, so that will take twice as long, but it's supposed to be huge. So, I mean, there's tritium. What about plutonium? You know, I mean, I'm not a nuclear expert, but I know uranium and plutonium. I'm not much on tritium, but anyway, at the Savannah River site, a plutonium pit is a key component of the nuclear weapon. Today, the United States does not have the capability to manufacture new pits at the rate needed to maintain the nuclear deterrent. What does that mean? That means the deterrent exterior of the United States is increasing at a rapid pace that is outpacing our ability to replenish a stockpile. That's not good. Anyway, the national mission is to achieve production of no fewer than 80 plutonium pits per year, as close to 2030, which is, you know, we're five and a half years away, to meet DoD requirements. Interesting. Fuel fabrication facility at the Savannah River site has a unfinished mixed oxide facility. They're going to produce 50 pits per year and no fewer than 30. 50 at Savannah, no less than 30 out in New Mexico at Los Alamos. Interesting stuff. Did you have any idea that Savannah, the Low Country, South Carolina, had this much nuclear business going on? I say no. So the approach is intended to enhance the resiliency and responsiveness of the nuclear security enterprise, that's the military, in my opinion, to adapt to shifting requirements and counter future threats. Repurposing the MOX, which is a mixed oxide, repurposing that facility at the SR, or the plutonium facility at Savannah Riverside. It's going to allow for the use of existing seismically qualified structures, so they don't have to build anything new. Interesting stuff. Savannah Riverside plays a critical role in securing, protecting, and disposing of vulnerable weapons, usable nuclear materials from around the world. That, and this is all coming from the Department of Energy, that sentence in and of itself is also a little alarming. They play a critical role in blah, 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 weapons, usable nuclear materials from around the world. Personally, I don't want nuclear weapons and spent war or unspent warheads from other places in the world brought to South Carolina, but that's just me. Savannah Riverside does something called plutonium downblending, where they use an adulterant material to try to dry bleed with plutonium oxide. That's how they dispose of the plutonium. Produces a mixture that's not usable for weapons, and it can be taken to a waste isolation plant in New Mexico for its eternity to go bye-bye. Anyway, that's as far as I'm going to go into what they do there at the Savannah Riverside. But I want to thank those guys again. And, of course, the girls that work out there. What I did think about was the effect on the community surrounding the Savannah Riverside. A couple of highlights that I want to get into. 1950, 1951 to today. I mean, that's many decades, many decades. That's a generation. And the place, from everything that I've read, everything that I've ever read, leads me to believe that security, safety, environmental consciousness is at a primo there. But I'm curious, with all that plutonium, uranium, and tritium, what is the over 80 years or something like that, almost 80 years, what kind of health hazards have there been? And I think you have to be cognizant of that. Allendale County, which has land in the Savannah River site, and people living nearby there, is ranked number 4 in South Carolina of cancer rates per 100,000 people. I mean, is that a correlation? I do not know. I'm not saying that it is. I'm just saying I don't know, but it is high. Jasper County is ranked 5th. And both of those were for prostate cancer. Is they're next door to each other? I just saw a fellow today at an event at Thomas Hayward. He had a Savannah Riverside Fire Department shirt on. People live here that work there. Jasper County is not next door to the Savannah Riverside property, but again, a lot of folks live in Jasper that work over there. When it comes to all cancers, okay, those numbers were prostate cancers in Allendale and Jasper County. But when it comes to all cancers in female, the data is exactly the opposite. All 3 counties are below the midline or even at the bottom. Now, is that a correlation? I don't know. I'd like to dig deeper into that. I mean, we have some counties in this state that have numbers of breast cancer, per 100,000 people that are staggering. They're not next to or, right around the Savannah River site. So I want to dig a little deeper and bring you some more history and information on that. See if anything is relative to cancer rates. Hey, and by the way, you can take tours of the facility. From what I understand, they book them 6 weeks out. I'm sure they got to check you out. You can take tours of the facility. Just go to SRS, that's Savannah River site, srs.gov, and poke around on the website. It's a pretty decent website. Find tours. They have a walking tour, which would be a trek in my mind, and they have a bus tour. Sounds pretty good. I think we may actually do that. They're probably very interesting. And hey, take a look around. You'll come home knowing a whole lot more, and if you glow a little bit, that's not that bad.
Everything that rocks is right here. Right here.
Let's rock.
With Big Patriot Radio.
That's what I'm talking about.
All right, it's 7:25 here on a Thursday night. One of the things we talked about last week has still been eating away at me. If you recall, I received a copy of a letter sent by an anonymous person to the editor and the president of the Island Packet in Beaufort Gazette on the 6th of May this year. The subject line was, quote, ethic concerns and questionable management skills with Beaufort County ACA, that is Assistant County Administrator Jared Fralix, end quote. I talked about that just a little bit, but tonight I want to go into it a little bit more because it's been eating away at me. I've been thinking about that, and I want to dig into that. Now, obviously, we are not accusing Jared Fralix of anything. This is simply a letter that was sent to us that was actually a letter to the newspaper, or the media outlet that I happened to be given a copy, and then a private note that, keep digging because the county did this and this. Anyway, let's unpack it, okay? So the author details a lack of personnel management skills by Mr. Fralix. Why does this matter? Or why should this matter to you? Why should you care? Well, if you pay taxes in Beaufort County, then this is your money that they're talking about. So it should matter because it's your money. Mr. Fralix manages the personnel in the Public Works Department. Specifically, this letter refers to a problem with an employee named Mr. Desai. Mr. Desai recently resigned his post with the county. And quite frankly, this entire thing is not about him. This is about Mr. Fralix. This gentleman just happens to have his name brought up. According to the author of the letter, who, if you unpack this thing sentence by sentence, has an innate insight of the workability and the employee functions within the Beaufort County hierarchy, not school system, but Beaufort County government hierarchy. What does that mean? Well, that means this is obviously coming from someone inside the county walls. The author observes Mr. Fralix allowed former county employee, Mr. Desai, to operate his section of the Public Works Department with very little oversight or input. Apparently, Mr. Desai was a department head. So the author is indicating the Public Works Department is in and was in turmoil at least allegedly per the author. Now, the author does make the correlation that Mr. Desai's lack of management skills may be attuned to Mr. Freilich's lack of skills. You learn from who you work for kind of thing. That's a plausible correlation. I will agree with that. The author also mentions another employee, a Ms. Bishop, who is employed in the engineering department, also supervised supposedly by Mr. Freilich. The author of the letter has interesting data on both Mr. Desai and Ms. Bishop, especially Ms. Bishop, I thought. And again, sentence by sentence, unpacking this, the author relates in the letter that she has been operating, she being Ms. Bishop, in an autonomous fashion without supervision. Sans supervision. Apparently, Ms. Bishop attends, according to the author, conferences in and out of state that has very little to do or nothing to do with her current responsibilities within the county. End quote. Now, further explanation, the author wrote about Ms. Bishop even vaping during meetings with, quote, colleagues, clients, and customers, end quote. Now, that is not an important part of my query and my unpacking, except that it does, in fact, show that no one is adequately supervising her. So it's not the point that she's vaping, which obviously is against the county rules. It's not the point she's vaping. It's the point that she's obviously unsupervised. It goes on, the letter, to read that, quote, she appears to have substance abuse issues which need to be addressed. The county has a drug policy in place, and it might be beneficial to perform a random drug test, end quote. So, and again, and I have no idea who this person is. And again, it's really not about her. It's about Mr. Freilich and the lack of supervision and his management style and skills and ethics. So some may read this letter and say, or hear this and say, you know, that last part there, that's a little petty. Well, it's really not petty at all. If Ms. Bishop has a drug problem, the county should be willing to get her all of the help and provide it everything she needs to get help and assist her in any way possible. I know it's still there. When I was there as an elected official, that stuff was all available for county employees. I would bet a donut that it's still available, so they need to make it available for her. Supervisors doing what they're supposed to do would know that and would be able to make that available. If she had the adequate supervision, maybe, just maybe, that would have been noticed. So it's not that it's petty or, you know, the comment is petty. Oh, she's doing drugs or whatever. It's not that it's petty. It's that it's unfortunate that nobody's watching the hen house, as they say. Now, I will say this. While I do not profess to be a psychological expert in any fashion, I do know people, and I watch people, and I listen, and I like to unpack sentences at a time. And what I found, this is the vocabulary and the phrasing of everything that I just read you, which was quoted directly verbatim. That is the vocabulary and the phrasing from a female professional. That's my opinion. That's what I have surmised, that this is being written, and I don't know who it is, as far as you know. This is being written by a professional female in my mind. Anywho, the letter goes on to say that the employee is abusing the flexible work schedule. But again, if she's not being properly supervised, humans will and do abuse work schedules. It's, to some people, that's human nature. I mean, that just goes without saying. That it is what it is. Now, aside from the information shared on two employees under the direction of Mr. Freilich, equally as important are some of the financial misfortunes that are mentioned. Okay. One is not more important than the other. We have to be cognizant of that. But the financial part of this is another concern. The author claims that the county has designated funding sources with specific requirements for authorization to expend. Now, I know that to be true. Every county government does that. Every municipal government does that. They have to do that. By law, they have to do that. It's not just all the money comes into a fund and they start paying bills out of it. No. It doesn't work that way. So that is true. And in other words, expenses, let's call it this. Excuse me. Expenses are coded. We'll just call them coded. And let's use examples. They're account codes, okay? Let's just use an example, and I'm making this up, but code 1234 is for the Bluffton Convenience Center. The electricity for the Bluffton Convenience Center. Code 4567 is the Northern Beaufort County pothole filling materials account. Code 6789 is to purchase number 5 stone, and code 12 Alpha Bravo is for beach sand. So now we have pockets. Now we have buckets. These are where expenditures get spent. This is all part of the ledger sheet, the credits and the debits. It has to be coded. What did the money go for? You get the picture, right? So this goes on to say that Mr. Felix has authorized questionable expenditures and transfers of funds from one department to another within the county's infrastructure organization. This should throw up a huge red flag. The letter says that Mr. Felix is transferring funds from one department to another within the county's infrastructure organization. So if this is all part of the engineering department or the public works department, you can't take money from the Beaufort or the Bluffton Convenience Center, their budget, and shoot it over here to the the bucket for buying beach sand. You can't do that. It doesn't work that way. You can't take money that's sitting in a bucket for beach sand and go ahead and borrow a little bit and send it over to stormwater. You can't do that. You can't do that. Now, what do I mean by all that? Well, let's just say under his purview, and this will kind of drive down a little bit deeper into my example. Under his purview, he has the budget for public works, engineering, stormwater, hazardous waste, and hurricane preparedness. Let's just use those all for funsies. I know he has those. He may have more. And let's just say again for funsies that they all had budgets of $1 million apiece. Across the board, they all had a budget for $1 million. But in the course of over the year, he needed to use some of the engineering funds that they had extra or more and shift over to public works because they didn't budget that appropriately. So the problem with that, there are on the surface problems, but the real big problems come into play in any of these buckets if there are state and or federal funds involved. Did somebody write a grant and got money from the state? Did somebody write a grant and got money from the federal government? Did they apply for ARPA funds? I mean, federal monies and state monies, I mean, it's smart counties are applying for that all the time. When you have those funds, state, federal funds, and you do this like the author is suggesting or alleging that Fralix is doing, you are now possibly commingling funds within the county government from the state and the federal government, and that is illegal. You cannot do that. It is illegal within the county budgetary procurement, the fiduciary finance system. you cannot commingle funds when it involves state and or federal monies. And it is a crime. It is a crime from both the state and the federal authorities. Again, I'm not saying that's what he's doing. I'm unpacking what the letter said that was sent to me and the newspaper for alleged examples. So let's keep it going, okay? The author continues to say and gives credence to an investigation of their own into Mr. Frelicks's background. According to the author of the letter, Mr. Frelicks, now catch this. This is, run this timetable through your mind. Mr. Frelicks was employed as the county engineer for Colleton County, and this is all alleged. I don't know. I'm assuming so. It makes sense, but this is in the letter. He was a county engineer, or the county engineer for Colleton County, and during the time he was involved in, when he was there, he was involved in questionable business practices while employed by the county. Now, apparently, Colleton County had or has an indefinite delivery contract that had been advertised, and a company named ICE, or Infrastructure Consulting and Engineering, was a selected firm of this indefinite contract. Now, allegedly, again, Mr. Frelicks was the engineer for Colleton. He directed numerous contracts, which, by the way, if anybody's looking for a piece of advice, never, 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 never allow your local government to enter into indefinite contracts. Easy to be manipulated for corruptive things, even if it's not intended. An indefinite contract is never, 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 never do that. When you hear your elected officials, or you hear your bureaucrats, or you elected officials that are watching this show, and you hear your county staff talk about we're going to have an indefinite contract, no, 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 no. The opportunity for corruption is ripe when you do that. Anyway, he directed these numerous contracts to this, what was it called again? ICE, Infrastructure Consulting and Engineering. A little while later, he became an employee of this same ICE firm. Now, was this quid pro quo, as we like to call it in the government? I don't know, but it certainly fits the definition, at least on paper, of such. I don't know. Allegedly, the consultant industry in South Carolina has raised eyebrows over this. Did and does. But alas, nothing was ever done. Also, allegedly, during his employment with, again, it's Infrastructure Consulting and Engineering, ICE, Mr. Frelicks participated in the formation of another new company named Providence Engineering Consultants. Providence Engineering Consultants. And they, Mr. Frelicks, according to the author, allegedly solicited work for this new company. He was employed with ICE, this engineering firm. He helped start a new engineering company, solicited work for this new company prior to his resignation from the ICE company, or Infrastructure Consulting. Allegedly, Mr. Frelicks became an employee of Providence Engineering. Again, allegedly, he helped begin this company, as I said before, while he was working elsewhere that had an indefinite contract provided, whatever, when he was county engineer. So, lo and behold, ICE, or Infrastructure Consulting Engineering, entered into some kind of a lawsuit against Mr. Frelicks and others. And I don't know who others is or are. The only thing I can find out about that is that Mr. Frelicks left that firm prior to Providence being disbanded. Now, we now take the story of Mr. Fralix and his employment tenure into Beaufort County. I mean, hey, why not, right? That's the logical next step. Mr. Fralix became part-time employee, and this will throw you for a loop. Allegedly, after quitting or resigning from what was that one called? Providence, and before it disbanded, he became a part-time employee with the city of Beaufort. This is allegedly the city of Beaufort and Beaufort County at the same time. That's right. I said he was an employee, allegedly, of the city of Beaufort and the county of Beaufort at the same time. Now, for the third time, this is completely alleged, but I agree with the author that a citizen, any citizen, cannot be an employee of two political subdivisions or governments at the same time. You cannot do that. That there's huge no-nos about that. The author of the letter raises the question of conflict of interest, and I agree 100%. Conflicts of interest and ethics violations run amok with this particular last piece of the puzzle. So we've been building in time up to today. So let's talk about today. There are questions that need to be answered, and they need to be answered right now. Let's talk about those. The first one, why is there even a question about retaining Mr. Fralix's employment with the county? Why is there a question? Why is he still there? Why is there even a question about retaining Mr. Fralix's employment with the county? Bona fide question. I didn't think it up, but it's bona fide. It's valid. Answer the question, Beaufort County. Next question. Is it true, was and or is Mr. Fralix collecting a paycheck from the city of Beaufort and the county of Beaufort at the same time? Now, that's easily found out, and if anybody would like to do that, more power to you. There's only so many hours in a day, and that's not the top of my list. But I'd like for somebody to find that out and let us know. Did he get paychecks from both at the same time? Was there or has there been a background check ever performed on Mr. Fralix to confirm or deny the business practices outlined in this letter? Decent question. Was there or has there been a background check performed on Mr. Fralix to confirm or deny his work and ethics as an employee in Colleton County? Did the Beaufort County HR department, did you do that? How about this question? Did Colleton County provide a referral letter for Mr. Fralix? And if they did, who was it that did that? And what did it say? I know they're not going to release that. It's a personnel matter, but they can say who provided it. Who wrote a letter of referral, of reference for Mr. Fralix from Colleton County? Have state and or federal funds been commingled by Mr. Fralix or anyone else under his purview in any department within the county as shown by an outside or third-party auditor? If not, why? If so, what were the results and who was the auditing firm? So here's a little asterisk thing, the county would say, yes, we had a full audit done by Hainsworth Sinclair Boyd, which was a total bullshit audit. That wasn't an audit. And what they read in public to Joe Passaman had already been talked about, and it was a complete scam. It was a sham. That was rehearsed. We talked about that ad nauseum. No, I'm talking about a third-party auditor hired by the county, not a lawyer, an auditor, to investigate. Oh, it hasn't been done? Then why don't you do that? Mr. Chairman, why don't you insist, since this letter has come out, alleging some serious implications of Mr. Freilich possibly commingling funds, which could land the county in a lot of hot water. Why don't you have that inspected and audited? Next question. Has Human Resources within Beaufort County done any employee interviews in regards to the suggestions made dealing with the Mr. Desai or Ms. Bishop's employment and alleged behaviors? Obviously, that's not going to come out. We don't need to know the particulars of all that. But have you done it? Just because the citizens, don't need to know personnel, contractual things, this is over and above that. These are alleged incidences of just a lack of management. Have you looked into that, HR? Next question. Who has Mr. Desai ever terminated during his tenure with the county, and have those individuals ever been contacted for statements? If not, why and when will they be? In other words, if this is going on with these two particular subordinates of Mr. Freilich, what about those other folks that have or are working for him, especially those that he's terminated? Have you gone back and talked to them? Hey, let's talk about this. You should do that. Well, this story is not anywhere near over by far. And if Mr. Freilich would like to come on and give an explanation to all of this, that'd be awesome. He's not an elected official. He doesn't owe me anything or any constituents. He has none. He's a bureaucrat. He's an employee of the system. So he doesn't have to, but if he wants to, more power to him. I'd love to hear his explanation. Again, all this stuff is alleged. It came from a letter that's pretty damn well good. It's pretty well written. And hey, if he doesn't want to, Jared, I understand. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal. Other ways to catch that fish. I would be surprised, however, if his lawyers would allow him to do that, come on this show, knowing possibly that I won't stop until I reach the truth. And the truth, by the way, the truth is not subjective. Did you hear that? The truth is not subjective. If anybody disagrees with that, I'd love to hear your reason why. And the reason why I say the truth is not subjective, feelings are subjective, opinions are subjective, truth and reality are objective, and that means built on facts and evidence. I digress into another story. We just want the truth. We want to know what's going on out there with this letter, these alleged conspiracies or truths inside Beaufort County government.
Locked and loaded.
Let's go.
Big Patriot Radio. Blues, news, country pop, and classic rock.
All right. It is 10 minutes before the top of the hour. Let me check here and just do a double check on the old email here to make sure there's no messages from our guest who's supposed to be coming on at the top of the hour. Don't see anything so far, so we will just wait on them. So anyway, we have new news inside the Beaufort County crime syndicate. An email came out recently from one of the most driven researchers I have ever read anything from. I'm not going to mention her name, but this gal is one hell of a researcher. The email that she sent out was sent to all the county council, town council, media outlets, blah, 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 all over the state. The address list actually is reminiscent of Skip Hoagland's emails, where, the list is a mile long. Anyway, this email was about the fact-finding mission that is was underway on another county employee, Mr. Eric Larson. He is the Capital Improvements Project Director. I want to read you a little bit about this email that she is putting out here, alleging some pretty serious things. Would love to hear some input or whatever you want to call it about this. Anyway, normally, just Joe Schmo, the employee, this kind of stuff would not, we wouldn't talk about it. But these people we're talking about are key figures in county government, either on the elected side or the bureaucratic side. Eric Larson, Capital Improvements Project Director, he was the former county assistant or the assistant county administrator, and he supervised engineering, public works, and the hurricane preparedness director for the county. I think he had the job that Jared Fralix has now. Anyway, Eric, hurricane preparedness, this guy was on point. I will give him that. Anyway, and the word is because he was, I believe he was terminated. I believe so. Mr. Larson, rather, got his tater peelings hurt when and this was when I was on county council, did not hire him as the county administrator, and instead we hired Ashley Jacobs. Shortly after her arriving, I don't know how many days, how many months, it doesn't really matter, there was some problems. Eric complained about it and filed a lawsuit about sexual harassment because he was a white male, or because he was a male, or whatever. And this is all coming from inside this letter from this lady. Anyway, all of that is really just gibberish to me at this point. He was hired back to the county after, I guess Eric Greenway got on board, county administrator. And at some point, Eric Larson came back as the project capital improvements director or whatever. So this letter that I'm talking about was in reference to a conference that Larson attended in the up north of Charleston, Isle of Palms, Mount Pleasant, up that way, for the South Carolina Association of Counties. County council was there, many, if not all. Other members of the county government staff was there. The email mentions a photo of the event where Mr. Larson captioned it, quote, "Relationships with staff, colleagues, and contracted professionals will be key to success as well." And key to success in caps. Key to success in caps. Hold on one second. Let me do a double check here. I just heard my, where are you? And we'll go back here. One second here. Go back and make sure we are still live. Okay. Anyway, key to success was capitalized. So further in the email, the author alleges that 6 months after hire, or rehire, I guess it really should be termed, Larson emailed the Human Resources Department asking for, this is alleged in the letter, asking for a copy of his job description and clarification of pay grade. Now, this isn't alleged. This is according to FOIA'd records. He asked for all that. Now, if you made six figures, which he was hired at six figures, it's like about $120 or something like that. You were an assistant county administrator. I think he could be considered that now too, I guess. I don't know. He is a consummate professional. Would you need your job description and a pay grade clarification 6 months after being on the job? I agree with the author of that letter that seems just a tad bit odd. Just a tad bit odd. Well, the author of the email does accuse Larson of allegedly violating the South Carolina Ethics Act and also allegedly commits fraud by misappropriation of county funds. Here we go. It's a double tonight with misappropriation possibly of county funds. How is that? Well, in her letter, she says one of the ways is through the recent addition to his apparently and allegedly. The writer of this email accuses Larson of allegedly using county staff to draw the architectural plans for his addition on county time. Those employees work in a department that he supervises. Again, this is not me. This is coming from the author of this email. Those same employees, they say, were allegedly seen in a county truck in the middle of a workday at Larson's home taking measurements outside. Now, the author of this letter, you could consider that to be, let me rephrase that. The author of the email or the letter has a whistleblower. The whistleblower tells that author that they were forced to do this. Go to his home in a county truck, middle of the workday, and take some kind of measurements, I'm assuming for the building permit. That's the assumption. The whistleblower says they were forced to do this as to not face retaliation from Larson or the possibility of the loss of their job. They went ahead and did it. Well, okay, take that for what it is. But lo and behold, the author of the email must have some decent informants. And I'm the first one to say that my information sources, who I never, ever, ever give up, have always been spot on. This one must have equal to, because this author wrote to the Ethics Commission about this, and the commission replied, and I quote, "The complaint against Eric Larson contained facts sufficient to warrant an investigation," end quote. Well, that's not good. That's not good at all. You know, it seems that every week there is something new that comes in regarding Beaufort County corruption, whether it's elected officials or bureaucrats. I mean, it is a Ferris wheel that never seems to stop. They pile people on, and every once in a while they get thrown off, but the Ferris wheel just goes round and around and around. Unbelievable.
All the wickedness and filth this world has to offer.
Rock music that shatters your bones. Big Patriot Radio.
That's some serious rock.
And you're responsible.
All right. It's what time is it? 8:00 tonight. So let's find out where our guest is. Let's see. It's busy time here during election season. Let's see. Let me try to find out what's going on here. Bear with me. Let's see. If you have anything you want to ask while we're waiting, please. We'd love to hear from you. Put it in your comments bar, and let's talk about it. We're going to try to find our guest and where he is. Let's see what else is going on out there. Let me pull this up. Recently, let me see if I can find this. Let's see. There is a story that we're working on right now that has to do with a Beaufort County former teacher that had been arrested for some, and I don't have the exact crime in front of me, for some sort of sexual misconduct. He wasn't a teacher. I'm sorry. He was a IT person who had or has access to obviously to kids. Anyway, some things have developed. We're learning. We're doing the background on this story right now. But apparently, I wouldn't say he got off like in scot-free. But apparently his charges have been dropped to a plea bargain, and it's pretty disgusting that this happens. People who do this kind of crime should be. I have no use for people like that found guilty. There's also a story that's been coming out of North Augusta recently. A teacher, Charles Richard Wilson, is his name. He is 58 years old, out of Aiken. Was a geography teacher. Was at North Augusta High School. He has been terminated. All mention of him has been removed from the school's website. And so forth. He was arrested or booked at the Aiken County Detention Center yesterday, given a $4,000 surety bond. Doesn't have court until July 12th of this year. Let's see. He was arrested by investigators with the ICAC, or the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, and officers of the Aiken Department of Public Safety. Apparently, this teacher distributed files of child sexual abuse material. That I don't know the extent of what that is, other than I call that pornography, child pornography. Anyway, we're working on both of those stories. Let me also let's take a peek back here. Other stories that we are working on with other outlets across the state. Yeah, I don't want to go into all that. We do have, hopefully, going to have. There is a story that is brewing about House Representative, South Carolina House Representative Chris. I believe it's Chris Murphy. We talked about that. Corey Allen and I talked about it a little bit, and we're working on some background information. He's having a primary race for his seat, and we're trying to get his opponent to come on the show. Hopefully, we'll have that set for next week. Remember, primary comes up here in South Carolina on the 11th of June, so you got to have all these done. There's a big story around Murphy and some alleged possible ethics violation, or and also alleged substance abuse, things of that nature, that we want to make sure that the truth is out there. And again, the truth is objective, not subjective. Okay, feelings and opinions are subjective, but we want to get the truth out there. So we're working on that story. Some other things that you need to know about recent polls in the South Carolina congressional district, first congressional district race. The latest polls came out today. Had the opportunity to take a look at them. Nancy Mace has it's like 26-point lead over Catherine Templeton. A wide lead. And Bill Young, we've had him on here. He has about 7% of the poll, which is not even remotely close. But he's polling at 7%. The undecided is at 24%. If you took the undecided and added that to Catherine Templeton's, now you have almost a dead heat, plus or minus 4.5 points. All of the politicos that I've either read from or talked to or both are saying that Nancy Mace has a incredible lead, and her fundraising is far and above beyond that of Catherine Templeton. Now, I have reached out to Catherine Templeton. I know her personally. She is giving the information to come on this show to her staffers. I know that takes a little bit. We're one of everybody that wants to get her on here. We have had Nancy Mace on here. And we appreciate that. So we hope Catherine will come on here. But these ladies, and it's basically down to these two. Now, let me say this. If something were to happen, bombshells on the Catherine Templeton and the Nancy Mace side, yes, Bill Young does have the ability and the opportunity to steal this away from both of them. Barring that happening, Nancy Mace has a comfortable lead. With the financial fundraising that she's done, that's going to add a few points to that. So Catherine Templeton, if she's got anything in her files that she's been holding off on, I did, you got to know when to throw those arrows out there. It's probably time. June 11th from now is what, 2.5 weeks, something like that, maybe 3 at the most, a little over 2.5, I guess. It's time. It's time to let those arrows fly, because you've got a lot of ground to catch up. If she can catch up 10 points and still have those that undecided and try to capture some of that, she will close this in on Nancy Mace. Now, at the same time, Nancy Mace needs to be going after those undecideds. Why are they undecided, Nancy? Is it because you've spent too much time on television? I don't know. Are they upset that you went away from Donald Trump and now you're back? I don't know. Pollsters can figure that kind of stuff out. Anyway, that's going on in the silly season of political work here in South Carolina. All right, let's see here. We were hoping to have Matt Leber on tonight. I spoke to him earlier, and let's see here. Bear with me a second. Let's see what's going on. Anyway, we have some people trying to find if he may be at another event, and that's fine. We'll get him in here as soon as he's done. One of the things about Matt Leber, if you remember, is his Matt Leber is let's go back over here. He is facing Sandy Sin. They have had remarkably one of the most contentious and nastiest primaries that there is. Excuse me. However, I don't put the blame on Matt Leber. Sandy Sin has come out with some ridiculous, and I don't even know if it's even her. Her minions, her handlers, or whatever they want to call themselves, as Corey and I talked about, are less than professional and are throwing things up that are absolutely false. We've watched. We've even dug into them ourselves. Corey has as well. Others have as well. Fitz News has as well. And everything that Sandy Sin's camp has come out with is total bullshit. It's garbage. Total garbage. Sandy Sin is worried about his military record, whether he was in or out or never in the military, which he was. Sandy Sin is worried about whether he went to college or not, and he did. He graduated. Sandy Sin is also worried about whether he's had how many divorces. Well, Sandy, divorce happens in probably about 50 to 55% of the people out here. And we really don't care if he's had a divorce. It's not fun to go through. I can tell you that. Maybe you're better than everybody and you haven't had to experience that. More power to you. Put a feather in your cap. But just like I could give a shit how many divorces Matt Leber has had, a lot of folks say you visit the plastic surgeon a lot. And you know what, Sandy? I don't care. I hope you do. If you can do that, I welcome you to do that. Stretch that face as far as you can. It's okay. Nobody cares. Nobody should bring that up. That has nothing to do with the piss poor job you've done as a state senator. Well, wait a minute. She's a Republican. What are you doing? Well, she's a Republican that signs that R by her name. She lives in a Republican district, but I would not call her a Republican. I would call her a centrist. She's fixated with becoming part of a clique known as the Senate Sisterhood, led by uber liberals Mia McLeod, Margie Bright Matthews. She being Sandy Sin is fixated on things that have zero to do with moving the important issues of the communities and the people of South Carolina. She comes and goes and votes with Democrats a lot of the time. I don't have that number. I was going to get that from Matt. But we do know the amount of time she has voted along with Democrat or democratically aligned bills. The number is high. She is not looked upon by all the conservative think tanks as a real Republican South Carolina senator. No, she's not one of them. And this is nothing new. This should not surprise anyone. It has been well documented, well talked about, well covered that the South Carolina Senate, while it is a Republican majority, it is not a conservative majority. It should be, but it's not. And there are many reasons for that, and we'll get into that at the appropriate time. But there are many senators in the South Carolina General Assembly who probably could put the D behind their name instead of the R, and their votes would make sense. However, we'll leave that where it is. We do have a note here. Oh, hey, Corey, how you doing, bud? I didn't see your name on the ticker. Corey tells us that Sandy Sin falsely told people that I, or he, was a member of the Proud Boys. That's right. We talked about that last week while she was door knocking. She used that lie to excuse a male friend of hers assaulting my wife and stealing her phone on camera. Really gross. It is. And if anybody wants to see that, you can go back on Corey Allen's Facebook page, the Overton Report. I think it is as well. And it's a few months ago. The video's on there. There's a picture of a guy and a video of a fella who, like batted the phone out of Corey's wife's hand. It was uncalled for at an event. Being called a member of the Proud Boys with all of the bullshit going on about the January 6th and people being falsely accused and falsely imprisoned. That's not something that Sandy should be going around doing. That's juvenile. It's sophomoric. And she claims to be, a senior senator. She's a lawyer. I think I don't know what kind of law she practices, but I know she's represented several police officers. I admire that. As long as it's for honorable things, and honorable people. I admire that. I'm not saying she's a terrible person. I'm saying she is saying and doing terrible things. She is listening to people who do not have her best interests at heart. Unfortunately, it's probably going to take someone like Matt Leber, and I would rather this be pro Matt Leber and less anti Sandy Sin, because I really don't need to say anything. We don't need to say anything. And I was going to pass that on to Matt. Like, you don't need to say a whole lot, because every time she opens her mouth, it's derogatory of you, and people see through that. I spoke with another candidate in another county recently, the past couple of weeks, and said, he was telling me that his opponent is starting to throw mud, make these accusations, say things that aren't true. And he wanted some advice. And I said, hey, look, I've been there. I mean, my very first campaign, it was pretty tough. I mean, it was a lot of barbs being thrown. Looking back on that, I don't think that is the best way to do it. Now, if somebody comes out and says, you are something that's slanderous to you, not that, not simple bullshit things, but something that's slanderous, something that's devastating to you or your family. Now that will deserve me to come back at you, but just to go down in the trenches and the mud and throw the mud, people see through that. And because of national politics, people are really getting tired of that. But you have people like CJ Westfall, who is, advising, things to happen, and she's going there. So anyway, back to my story. I advised this guy. I said, you know what? Talk about you. Why you, and less about, this guy. Don't get in the mud. Don't throw, unless he says, you're a fat slob with, you go to walk around with your finger up your nose. Don't go there. Talk about why you're the best person for X job. Corey came back, represented police departments. Gotcha. I stand corrected. Not individual officers. Understood. I hadn't seen if Michelle's on here. I saw her earlier, I thought. Where is he? Michelle, where is he? We'll hang out here for a little bit of time and get him on here. But anyway, hopefully he'll be here. Back to Matt Leber and his district. He is currently a House member. Let's see if I have that. He's in the 116th district, running for Senate 41. I had Matt on here when he was running for the House. Totally support him. It was great to interview, and just told Matt's joining the show now. Fantastic. We'll get him on here, but he has a lot of energy. He's a wealth of knowledge. I think he will do great things, bringing his style to the Senate, to the people of Charleston and Dorchester, counties in the 41st district. Joining people there like Brian Adams out of Berkeley County, law enforcement officer. He's been great. He's paying his dues, sitting on the back row. He's starting to come forward a little bit. I think he's going to be in his third term, I guess it is, or second term. I don't know. Look forward, to Matt Leber working alongside of people like that. I think as much as I tend to disagree a lot with Larry Grooms and some of his behaviors, I think he will be a good mentor in some areas. There are other South Carolina senators that will be even better mentors to someone like Matt, and that's going to be Shane Martin, Senator Martin out of I believe he is out of Spartanburg. Let's see. I think we have a message coming up here. Hold on one second here. We're going to copy and put this in technology, ladies and gentlemen. Technology. Anyway, Senator Martin, I think, is going to be a good influence. I like Senator Bennett I think he's out of Berkeley County as well. I like him as an individual. I think he's doing a good job. Obviously, Tom Davis is a friend of mine. He will be a good mentor as far as I think he will have a different view on things than Tom does. For the most part, But they will, and obviously Chip Campson out of Charleston. Those will be good influences as far as how the Senate works. And I think he's going to be a great add to the South Carolina Senate. So I have sent the link, Corey or Michelle, if you're listening, to Matt through what is this? I guess you call that the direct message or private message out of Facebook. So he should be able to click on that and jump right in here. So we'll let him come. And I think we see him coming on now. All right. Yep. There we go. Let's click a couple of buttons, and we're going to bring him onto the stage. Anyway, introducing our guest. Again, he is serving in the South Carolina House of Representatives in the 116th District, running for the South Carolina Senate for District 41 Republican nomination against, again, incumbent Sandy Sin. He is a veteran. He's a father. He's a husband. Please join me in welcoming Matt Leber to the show.
Hey, I appreciate it, Mike. I appreciate the invitation. Sorry if I'm a little late. I apologize, but we're working the district. We're putting out signs. We're knocking on doors. We're making texts and phone calls, and I am just overwhelmed and so busy. I
understand. Not a problem. And we were talking about you. You might want to go ahead and put a cape on after what I was saying about you. There's people out here. We've got over almost 1,000 folks in all different forms watching right now. And I did the best job I could for you.
Yeah, well, I'm the conservative option in this race. I'm the constitutionalist. I'm the one that believes in freedom and liberty. I want to go, into the next chamber and represent you guys and make sure that, I'm not up there working for the establishment or working for the Rockefeller wing of the Republican Party, the sort of progressive party, part of the party. And that's what we've got in my opponent. I mean, there's a clear difference in me and what I'm for and what she sort of stands for. I mean, Reagan said it best. He said, we need bold contradictions, we need bold contrast, and no pastel color contrast. And that's what the voters have in this. They have somebody who has a tried and true conservative record, and somebody who votes with the Democrats vis-a-vis, Marjorie Bright, Matthews, 128 times in the last 8 years. Yeah. That's this is a +9 Trump district. It deserves a conservative.
When I brought up the segment for you here. I had one of the things I was saying, and I may have mentioned this in our email, that even though I had told you I wanted this to be more about Matt Leber and less about Sandy Sin, I think the majority of the time I have been talking about the absolute idiocy that she and her handlers, CJ Westfall and anybody else she's listening to, the idiocy that they've been doing. So I don't want to concentrate on that. Everybody has seen the videos. We've played them. We have them up on our channels. We have put them out there. Let's look at why Matt Leber. And if you remember several years ago when you were running for your very first time, I think I had you on election night. You were excited. It was a big party over there in Charleston. I want to ask you a couple things. First of all, I think I heard you say in a speech one time that, there's a supermajority in the House. Mm-hmm. And you feel that, now's the time Matt Leber, can make a difference in the Senate. Right. Tell me, how can you make that difference? Yes, we know there's a supermajority, and that sometimes is not, that's left to be discovered. Mm-hmm. But tell us your meaning behind that.
Well, so those, you and Mike, we follow politics. This is like our hobby. It's like what we're into. We're going to follow every single movement of this bill and that bill and the direction of the state and all that. And we're pretty knowledgeable in that area. So I flipped my seat. It had been blue since Reconstruction. I got into politics. I didn't go pick on a Republican who was maybe 10% less conservative than me or something. I went and found Democrat to go pick on. And I flipped a seat that's been blue since Reconstruction and turned that thing our way. And I think I've established that now that it's going to stay that way. So we had a different speaker at the time. You know, Jay Lucas was a little more progressive, or he just dragged his feet and that sort of thing. And when Merle Smith came in, you know, maybe he's not as conservative as me, but he had pent up sort of bills and issues that you know, felt like for a decade that Speaker Lucas maybe had not got behind so much at that. So there was a lot of these conservative bills that we have passed in the last 2 years. And you can argue semantics and say, well, we should have done this or should have done that. But, you know, we passed constitutional carry. We got the heartbeat bill passed. I mean, we did bond reform, the fentanyl bill. We did the biggest tax cut in South Carolina history. We pulled in a big way to the right and sort of, you know, America first conservative politics. And that's probably indisputable in anybody's mind. And I'm one of 124 folks. I didn't get a crown. I'm having to negotiate and make deals. We're winning. We're pulling it to the right. And so here I am in my first term. I went on the judiciary, which is a big deal for a non-lawyer. First of all, and I was elected on the first ballot as the chairman of the freshman 28 freshmen, which is the biggest class since 1996. That's a pretty big deal. Usually it takes 5 or 6 ballots and you got, you know, 10 people fighting over it. And I won it nearly unanimously. The only votes I didn't get were the 2 Democrats. So, and then I was, the speaker saw leadership potential in me and put me on the whip committee. So I was a whip. And, you know, so I've done well. But here I am churning out, or part of the process of churning out these very conservative bills. I wish that we could have done more. I wish they could have been even further conservative and all these sort of things. We'll argue about that later in a different day. But we were doing much better than the Jay Lucas era. And I look over across the aisle or across the chamber, the lobby into the next chamber, and I see basically 1 or 2 senators, 3 maybe, that are stopping the conservative agenda. And I had the misfortune or the good fortune, whatever, of living in a district that's represented by the biggest problem for the conservative agenda. Yeah. And she's been there for 8 years, and she's not done anything remarkable other than winning Democrat awards for standing in our way and getting more of what we wanted to get done, you know, in our lifetime. And so I'm sitting here thinking to myself, well, what is my path forward? Because this is duty for me. If I'm a slave to anything, I'm a slave to duty. And for me, my process is my goal, or what I wanted to do for South Carolina, or what I felt that South Carolina needed me to do for South Carolina, was to keep pushing that conservative movement forward. So if I've got one person that's in the way, and I'm part of a majority, and I can recruit a good replacement for my House seat, which I've done in James Steeple, and he's going to be great. And he's going to win overwhelmingly, much easier than I had to do when I won that seat. But if I can go over and take this problem off the chessboard to make sure, or to enable more of our conservative bills and legislation to pass, then that's duty to me. That's what I have to do, rather than stay in the supermajority and keep turning out bills that are going to be blocked.
So, and that's exactly what we have been telling people, that, you know, we're winning in the House, given the problems that we still have. We're winning in the House, but there's a stalemate. It's getting stalled. So you're going to take over Senate District 41. How many other Senate districts do we either need to replace some folks or flip? There's a few.
Yeah, I can think of 3 or 4 names easily. The problem is a senator has special abilities that a House member doesn't have. We in the House, we don't filibuster. We cannot filibuster. We have regular order, which is great. In Congress, they do not have regular order.
Right.
So I'm not here wanting to change regular order. But in the Senate, they can lift their hand on a bill and stop it from progressing. One senator. And I think a lot of this stuff is off the record, but they can choose like 5 bills in a session, in a 2-year session, to say that bill's not there. And that's absurd power. It's properly corrupt, but those that are wielding this corrupt power that care less about the Constitution and care less about our Republican or our constitutional representative form of government, and will easily wield that power and not have a problem with it, they need to come off the chessboard. That person needs to be. And there's 4 or 5 Republican state senators that fit in that category.
Have you had the opportunity to, I want to talk about some substance here in a second, but have you had the opportunity to talk to, whether it's, and I don't agree with them all the time, but Larry Grooms, Chip Campson, good friend of mine, Brian Adams, some of those other folks in and around the Charleston, we'll call it the big Charleston delegation. Have you had the opportunity to talk to them and see, hey, this is where we're stumbling and what you can do to help kick that ball rather than just leave it sitting on the field?
Yes, I have. And I have good relationships with all of those folks that you've mentioned. I think they would probably agree that probably a little more conservative, maybe. But I have a good understanding with them. I have a good relationship. They know I'm not there to tear the place down. I'm trying to be a good legislator and be a principal legislator. So they don't fear that about me at all, that I'm just some sort of firebrand or whatever. Now, wrong about that. I might be more of a firebrand than they believe, but I'm telling you, they don't necessarily have a problem with me. They're rooting for me. I had Larry Grooms. I met him in the hallway in the General Assembly, and we're careful what we'd say and don't say, but there was high five, and he has that sort of personality, and I'm solid with Senator Adams. Not a problem whatsoever. I think he would welcome my victory in this. Campson is a little more difficult of a read, but I appreciate Campson's at least interest in the Constitution and ability to articulate what he feels the Constitution says. My opponent has no interest in the Constitution and couldn't articulate any of it. She doesn't understand that because she opposes the Second Amendment so strongly, that when I explain to voters that, okay, well, she's against the Second Amendment right now, but she's showing you and proving to you that she has no problem going against the Constitution on this particular amendment. What's next? What is it? Next week she doesn't like the Third Amendment, and maybe the Amendment you got to speak in when you're arrested. I don't know what Eighth Amendment, undue, treatment, cruel treatment, and all that sort of things. Right. 10th Amendment, the states are sovereign or not. There's all of these amendments that someday she may have a problem with, and she's proven to you that because she had a problem with the Second Amendment, she was willing to legislate, even though the Constitution forbids that any legislation would infringe on the rights to be armed. She doesn't care about that. She believes that she can say she doesn't like a portion of the Constitution, and if she has enough votes to override the Constitution, she thinks that's enough. That not that we have to change the amendment or do away with the amendment and be ratified in the state. She doesn't care about that process. She just thinks that she can dictate to you, and that's problematic for me. Yeah.
So Charleston County, and I know you have Dorchester County, a portion of both, and you don't have any of Berkeley though, right?
No, we got Colleton County though. We got
you do have part of Colleton, okay. The Cottageville probably area.
Yeah, Cottageville, Roundo, all that way up I-95 or across I-95, like 4 precincts across the other side of I-95, like I-95 to the ocean.
Gotcha. So I want to concentrate on Charleston County. What are the key things that the voters of Charleston County are saying, hey, this is not getting proper representation for us? What are their key items that they need to be addressed?
Infrastructure and basically traffic. I mean, you can say the word traffic and it's all encompassing. I mean, I live here on Johns Island, and there are times that, between 7 and 9 a.m. in the morning and 3 and 6 in the evening, you do not leave the house because you're not going anywhere anyway. The traffic is that bad, and this area's been neglected. I mean, we have so many waterways and rivers. The folks in the upstate, the legislators from that area, they don't understand how problematic that is, and the fact that when you build a road year. It suffers wind degradation and the salt air and water and the hurricanes and all that. They can build a road and it lasts 20 years. Right. So they're using, we build a road in 3 years, we need an upgrade already. So that's a big issue. But I'm finding, when we poll, we've had internal polls, a lot of the national issues are just going to be forefront in everybody's minds. Immigration is probably number one. And it's really funny. My opponents put out 2 mailers in the last week, and they both focused on immigration. And if you're astute at all, you know that there's only limited things that the state can do about immigration. Unfortunately, we can stiffen up E-Verify and make it problematic for an individual to get benefits, state benefits, et cetera. But she's putting out these mailers like she can literally, build a wall and all this. It's just ridiculous. But she's dependent on voters not being knowledgeable. And I think she's going to be surprised in that area. I think the GOP primary voters are very knowledgeable. And they know that she's neglecting infrastructure, roads and bridges and flooding and all that comes with it, the tax situation and personal rights. I mean, we are the last bastion of defense against the federal government taking away rights as they did, during the COVID crisis and the government created crisis. And that's what voters care about. And they're able to distinguish what Nancy Mace can do and what Matt Leber can do.
Right.
I think more knowledgeable than she thinks. She's expected them not to be, and I think she's going to be surprised on June 11th.
Voters, historically, voters, I think it goes without saying, every inch of the state and people that I talk to, voters are getting smarter.
Yeah.
When I've ran, they're getting smarter. You can't hide. And there's a couple of comments here. I'll put one up. People are rightfully angry about the actions. It's time to stand up for real. That cannot be any truer. Also true is that she started harping on immigration because there's nothing legitimate to stand on. And I totally get it. I think, when the folks up in DC and the federal, their elections, they're going to handle that kind of stuff. But the daily thing and infrastructure for Charleston County and the greater Charleston metro area, that's not going to be fixed with one easy thing. No. You've got a huge job ahead of you to start putting a dent in that. Moving aside from that, there are problems in this state when it comes to trafficking, and I'm speaking of human trafficking. There are problems with a fentanyl and drug problem. I-95 going through your and my districts. We call that the Pill Parkway. What can you, do you have anything that you've been, talking with others on, or maybe you started it in the House to start really putting some, and believe me, I'm not a new law guy. I think we need to be getting rid of some laws.
I'm with you on that.
But we got a problem with fentanyl and human trafficking. What can we do to start really attacking that?
Well, we did pass a very strict and fentanyl bill in this session. It's 10 years the first offense, anything 4 grams, and then 25 years for the second offense. It is strongest in the Southeast. What we've got to do is make sure that our law enforcement, SLED all the way down to local, are funded enough where they can actually attack the problem. A part of most of, you don't have a law problem. You don't have a legislative problem for the most part in South Carolina where we don't have enough laws. What you have is a law enforcement problem. Our current our problem is that we don't have enough of them. Whether they're not funded enough and we don't have enough of them hired. I mean, I think in Charleston County we're short 84 deputies in the sheriff department. And that can probably point at Sheriff Grosiger, the Democrat elect. But we need to fund the blue, and they're not funded enough. And so I think the laws are stiff enough in the area of fentanyl and trafficking. We probably need to explore the area of human trafficking. I know there was a bill that came up about pedophilia, and I sponsored it. It was about if you're a convicted pedophile, you should possibly be able to receive the death penalty.
Mhm.
I'm all for that. I think that's just like logical for any GOP Republican voter.
Mhm.
It's strong. We need to get stiffer with our penalty process, and we need to have minimals that judges can't let these guys off the hook. And we did do the bond reform, and it was progress. I wish it was even stronger.
Right.
That these violent felons, these guys that have been arrested, that shouldn't get out on bond and be right on the streets again. So I don't want to turn into New York City and the way they treat the DAs treat their bonds. You know, we've got a little bit of a mix. There's some areas probably that we need to look at. Human trafficking, for one, I think is an area that we need to look at legislatively. But in a lot of the other areas, it's just about funding.
So,
To enforce the law.
right. I'm with you there. And you know, in South Carolina, the municipalities and the counties, that's where the officers are hired from. They have, and the county councils and supervisors and town councils, they have their work cut out, and they need to solve that problem on their end. However, I think, you know, would you agree that in the state house, there either needs to be some incentives or something from the state side that can help these counties or these municipalities for law enforcement?
We need to make it more attractive. You know, there's police that have gone through police academies in like New York and upstate or up the northeast area of America where they are highly trained, but they've been in the streets with the defund process and BLM and the hands off as far as enforcing law. Those guys we need to incentivize them to come to South Carolina. We're attractive, and there have been bills. We've reduced the tax rate for those guys. There's one bill I think that Brandon Cox had put out that was they get a 5-year sunset period on buying gear and those sort of things. We need to explore that. We need to incentivize those guys to come down here and be law officers in South Carolina, this red state, where they can be well respected and earn a good living. And I'm all for that. I mean, I recently got the firemen's, the South Carolina Professional Firemen's Association. I got their endorsement. So, you know, I'm all for supporting those guys, making the first responders an attractive profession where they're well funded and feel like they are appreciated. I think a long way. I'm like you, you know, I was criticized at times for not churning out bills, drafting out bills like that. Like you, sometimes we have enough laws. Figure out the process that came up in the big tobacco bill, the vape bill that was recently, and all the was about enforcement, but then they were asking for more laws, and that doesn't make logical sense to me.
I want to change gears here, and you have said that when it comes to you and your opponent, you all are. I don't have the exact quote, but you're diametrically different. You are different people.
Yeah.
I want to talk about Scout Motors. You voted for that. Sandy Sin voted for that.
Yep.
Why and how do we give $500 million to a foreign company for a vehicle, for a Barbie doll that doesn't even have a prototype yet? How do we do that? Why do we do that?
Well, you know, we ran a budget surplus for many, many years in South Carolina, and that part of that budget surplus, I think voters expected it to be invested wisely. And what you have with a lot of these automotive industry, and you got to remember, we've got BMW and we've got Volvo, and now we've got Scott Motors there in the middle, and they're talking about bringing in their Audi subsidiary quickly. So this, for me, what was attractive for me was this Scout Motors was going in the sort of 6th district, which is the corridor of shame, which Duke Buckner ran on constantly saying that Clyburn, the congressman in this area, and it was just the corridor of shame. And I know that Duke had conversations with the Volkswagen folks. So, I mean, how else do you think he was going to bring jobs or was proposing bringing in investments in the area? And, you know, what we're talking about here is I think in total was a $1.2 billion investment. And that was sort of the going across the entire country. And what made me think that it was actually good in South Carolina, that 900 million of it was hard asset and infrastructure. So even if the company in the world, Volkswagen, failed, which is the odds of that so low that you can't put a number on it. The total that we put out in this deal to attract the business, $900 million of it was infrastructure and hard assets that we keep. I mean, they're building roads and putting in the buildings and the factory areas and building that up. And part of it was the bridge that went over I-90 or I-7, I believe it was. I'm thinking the highways mixed up. That what didn't exist, so that there would be quick transportation between the Midlands and the Upstate down to Charleston Harbor. And then you have all the other secondary companies that were going to come in with that in that area and provide these jobs. I mean, you've got poor folks in that area that were working at 70, the Circle K. Were learning about these jobs and being able to apply for those jobs and making $40,000, $50,000, the same education level. And that didn't exist in that area. And you got to remember, only 11 legislators in both chambers voted against that. So you got 170 of us that are in the, and only 11 of us voted against it after looking at the bill and looking at the numbers and understanding what made sense and what didn't make sense. And so that was one of the hardest votes, but I'm comfortable with it because I believe, like BMW, it's going to be financially good for the state.
Let me ask, having been involved, not on a deal that big, but having been, sure.
Okay.
Having been involved in some legislation to attract business, not on that level, but in its own here in Beaufort County, there has to be, and there always is, I owe you, you owe me, gimme, gotta, all that kind of stuff. I'm assuming that there is a stipulation that they have to provide X number of jobs.
Oh yeah.
Is that correct?
They don't provide the jobs.
What is the clawback? Say that doesn't happen. I mean, these people honestly, there is no prototype. And it's electric vehicles that, I mean, that actually could fail. What happens if it does fail? What does the state get? What do the taxpayers have as a clawback on that? Should that happen?
I mentioned that most of the money, up to 80% 900 million of it, is all hard assets and infrastructure that can't be taken away. So it's, we were in competition with other states, and what my ideal solution would be for attracting companies would be that South Carolina reduce its corporate tax and other tax that exists down to a minimal, and be able to somehow promise these corporations that is in perpetuity, or at least 50 years. That would attract businesses much more. But that's very hard to do because one General Assembly session cannot contract the future sessions.
Right.
You
can't hold another body responsible for.
Right. So I'm going on like 4 hours sleep right now.
What about like business licenses? That's not your all's purview, but I would assume you deal with the counties. Are the counties at least going to get business license, revenue from Scout?
Sure, yeah, and part of that money as well. So a lot of this it's not all just state money. The county in that area and the Columbia area had to put up, I'm going off here, hundreds of thousands of dollars to be a part of this plan. But it was no different than what Alabama and other state was in competition for this. It was a similar deal being offered, and most of it is tax incentive, and then requirements that say, look, okay, the Volkswagen saying we're coming in, but we want the infrastructure to make sure that when we get down to producing these vehicles, they can move out of here to the harbor or get on the. So we had to produce that infrastructure. So most of this deal was all about just enabling Volkswagen or giving them the confidence that they produce this product, they were able to get it to the market.
Okay. That
was most of the deal, and that's what, and that only the state can do that, or major counties can produce infrastructure to make the deals even be possible.
I want to go into some other things here and be cognizant of your time, respectful of your time. I think with this particular subject, I think people, and this is just talking with some folks, in a couple of 5 or 6 counties, they got really raw about the Carolina Panther deal. Okay.
Yeah.
That was the first thing. And Joe and Jane America they're gun shy. They're not, I think countrywide trust needs to be rebuilt.
But if you look at the deal, most of the money that went to the deal was the exchange, the interstate exchange that was in that general area. Because it wasn't as much as the Volkswagen deal. I wasn't even in the session of the General Assembly when this all went down, but I have seen the graphs and the data deal, and even that was almost like a break even, because there's been other businesses that have come in to use that infrastructure and able to thrive on the infrastructure exists. They would never even come in themselves. So I'm not going to be able to answer to that particular process. I spent weeks studying this Volkswagen deal, knowing that it had overwhelming support in both chambers, regardless of what Matt Leber did anyway. And I was comfortable with the amount of money that was being invested, and I had confidence in the return. BMW, the investment that they did in the 90s, if you look at the numbers, it's overwhelmingly productive for South Carolina, overwhelmingly beneficial for South Carolina. So, if you live in a homeowners association and you decide, everybody in that community decides, well, I'd love to have a pool. Well, the one person that lives down the street from you, and you can't, and it's a bad analogy, maybe, be able to afford to put that pool in. But together, everybody can put that pool in, knowing that it's beneficial for everyone. And that was sort of where we were at with the Volkswagen deal. I think it was a minimal investment. I think the return's going to pay out. I would rather have a situation where we can attract these guys because we have zero corporate tax, but we can have zero corporate tax. And in the next session, they come and Democrats win the House, Senate, and we're back up to 15 or 20. So these corporations don't have confidence in that. So they make these sort of tax incentive deals where they have a contract 10 years or something, and they're more confident in that deal. So Matt Leber didn't create this environment. I'm trying to do the best I can, making the decision with investing the folks' money the best way we can.
Last part I want to talk about is the budget. Apparently, with budget, we haven't had shortfalls. We've had some overages, for lack of better terms.
Yeah.
A solid financial conservative would say any excess should go back to the people.
Yep.
What is your feeling, and is that even possible? I've had some folks in the General Assembly tell me that that's a wish list that will never happen.
Well, there has been rebate checks sent back to the taxpayers. They've just not been big enough to be so impressive to folks. I mean, a couple $100 has been sent back to you is just the grocery bill. But I'm all for dividing the money up and sending it back to the taxpayers. I'm all for that. My opponent's not. My opponent was trying to find a way to spend it, And then we had the $1.8 billion that was found recently that was sitting in a transfer account. She at our debate in Dorchester, she said, well, we don't even know if that money exists. Well, we know that money exists. Me and you know that money exists. It's sitting there and it needs to go back to the taxpayers.
I think the problem with that money was that nobody could tell, at least from what I understand, where the money came from. And before they can give it back, it has to be found that it's not, federal grant money or ARPA money or something like that.
I'm willing to just take part and just, we do need to be assured of where money came from, where it was going, why it didn't go there. Does it need to still go there? All that. I'm willing to go through that. But my initial position and firm position is that money needs to go to taxpayers, if at all possible. Not we need to find another earmark or another plan that we can spend that money on.
I'm really glad to hear that. I mean, that if you look at the number of taxpayers, I think the rough math on the top of my head is like that would be $1,200.
Yeah.
Something like that. $1,200, $1,300. per tax-paying adult in this state. That can make a difference in somebody's. Well, I mean, I'd love to have an extra $1,100. You know what I'm saying?
Family members need to forego their checks, their individual checks, and just send them out to the public just to make sure there's no interest there, conflict of interest there.
Have you ever, last question, have you ever been asked to comment on this statement? I would never vote on a tax increase without a tax decrease equal to or greater than the ask of the increase.
Mike, I'm a real Republican. There's not a tax cut I've ever met that I don't like. I mean, we're overtaxed. If we're running surplus, we're overtaxed because government, by its nature, wastes money. And there are ways that we should figure out where that waste is happening so that the surplus is even higher initially for the first year, maybe. And then we need to cut taxes in that amount and then refund the amount that was the surplus, if at all possible. So I don't even want to play that what if game. I think taxes are way too high for folks anyway. I think the supplemental income tax should be done away with, similar to Florida and Tennessee. And then we find a way to define limited government by consumer, flat tax or whatever other plan you want to come up with, where the citizen can give itself a tax cut if they need to. If they're having trouble times, they don't need to go buy that vote or whatever, and then they don't have to pay any tax for that quarter. So I'm a real Republican. I've never met a tax cut I don't like.
Well, that is the answer I was definitely looking for. And I know the viewers of this show like that kind of answer. And I'll tell you, that is not the answer your opponent would have. Before I let you go, I did say this before you got on camera, and I just want to reiterate it, that, I saw all the videos. To be quite honest with you, the Joe and Jane America, Joe and Jane Charleston, we don't care if you've had one divorce or 5 divorces. I mean, we don't, it doesn't, we most like 52% of the people have gone through them. We don't, it's okay. We don't care. We don't care if your degree is in merchandising or book weaving or business administration. That's really not. And you know what else, Matt? We don't care if Sandy has had 1 facelift or 50. We don't care.
No comment.
We don't care. But I say that because what was done to you is an abomination. That is juvenile politics by juvenile brained individuals, and we as taxpayers, we don't want to see that. We don't want that.
Yeah, I didn't want to go through it. But most folks say, Matt, wow, you've been really stoic through this whole process, and I have. And but I tell you, the debate was very cathartic. I was able to really say some things I've been wanting to say for a long time. And we were being very strategic. We didn't want to. She's been hammering me for 3 months, and we spend money like that. We didn't want to peak 3 months before the election. We wanted to peak like now, a month and 2 weeks and 3 weeks out. That's when we wanted to peak. So I had supporters that were worried. They were saying things like, "Why aren't you fighting back?" And that was difficult. That was one of the most difficult part of it. Is, well, we've got to be smart. We got to be good stewards with our campaign funds, and we were. And the support was overwhelmingly when this stuff started, and then we started hitting back, and we hit back in the same medium that she attacked us on, and these were about false allegations. Senator Sand has not told you the outcome of any of them. She doesn't want you to know the outcome because the outcome's important, though, but the outcome's not favorable to her. Sure. WP, because SLED did a full investigation of me and said, there's nothing there. And we've proven that, I think, in the debate, proven that overwhelmingly, and we've proven it and we keep hitting her on the issues. That's the whole point of this. She doesn't want to talk about the issues. And to this date, Mike, she has not criticized for a single vote or a position or a stated philosophy that I have. She's not criticized me for one single thing. It's all about, the stuff.
Personality.
Yep.
And for those that are watching that maybe of the Sandy Sin camp, we're glad to have you here. And so everybody else knows, we have invited her ad nauseum And it wasn't until 2 weeks ago, I guess, her campaign minions to a debate said no.
Yeah, they
Did
refused.
not do it.
It's not because they want to debate; it's because they know that they would go badly for them, like it did in Dorchester.
I have offered equal time to her, just like I've given to you. I have not heard back from that camp, so I assume they're not wanting to. So, how can people get in touch with Matt Leber? Maybe make a contribution or knock on some doors or whatever. How can they do that?
Well, you can sign up for all that at LeberForSenate.com. You can go through there's a contribution button. There's also a button for anything that you want to volunteer for, from putting a yard sign in to knocking on doors to making phone calls. And my number is 843-227-1331. You can call me directly. My number's always been public. Folks, I answer the call. Whoever it is that calls, I help folks who are even outside of my district. That's who I am. I do not hide from my constituents. And so, yeah, if you want to get on the Leber bandwagon, let's do it. Let's rock and roll. Let's win this thing.
We have your website posted up there on the screen, LeberForSenate.com, and we'll post your phone number. That right there says a lot. If you'll take a phone call, that people need to think about that. We do have one last question somebody put in here. How do you feel that one of your opponent's paid operatives is actually a chair of a county GOP?
I think that the
Against the
vote
rule.
should evaluate that. They should take that into account when they're looking for fairness and looking for impartiality from those that are put into positions that are of trust. And they should evaluate that person going forward. And they should evaluate my race based on some facts that may exist if the evidence is proven. And that should, that should help me, I would say. Yeah. But, I'm focused on running my campaign. I'm focused on fighting for the Leber cause and fighting for the conservative low country culture that I don't think is being elected by their current state senator. And I want to apply for that job, and I'm asking everybody for their vote.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Vote for Matt Leber, LeberForSenate.com. The phone number is 843-227-1331. June 11th. That's the primary day.
Yes,
Get out there in Charleston and Dorchester and vote for Matt Leber. Matt, thank you so much. We want to have you back on here after you win this primary. Is there a Democrat that wants to take you on?
There is, and I don't even know their proper pronunciation yet.
We'll figure it out.
I want to win this race first.
There you go. All right. Thank you so much. You're welcome anytime to come on this show. Matt Leber, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks for having me, Mike. Appreciate it.
All right. All right. Matt Leber right here on the House of Cards.
Locked and loaded. Let's go. Big Patriot Radio. Blues, news, country pop, and classic rock.
All right. Thank you so much to Matt Leber for coming on. Folks staying around, watching, and on all the different formats. We greatly appreciate that. And hey, right before we go here, we're coming up on, it's 5 minutes after 9. Holy cow. Don't forget, go by our Patreon page. We could use your help. Patreon.com/Beaufort County House of Cards. Or you see, scrolling at the bottom of the screen, our Venmo there. That helps keep independent journalism alive. I encourage everyone to pay attention to what's going on all around you, all around the state, and all around the world, because it's becoming interesting to say the least. All right, until next Thursday, good night, America. Good night, South Carolina, and watch your six.